Hello and welcome to another episode of Practical AI by Modern Logic, the show where we talk about AI and how it can help your small business be more profitable and thrive in a changing world. My name's Andy, and I'm here today with co-host.
Dustin, and let's dive right into it. So last week's episode was a little more formal because it was our first episode. So we're going to try to be a little less formal
Well,
based on
actually, you're
feedback.
forgetting the episode I did with Dylan and I.
Oh yeah.
Which the problem with that one was probably way too geeky. So we're going to try to change it up and be a little more conversational and just talk about stuff that's actually maybe a little more interesting.
A little more business focused, a little less in depth. But yes, I had COVID, so you got to meet the twin, and thankfully I'm mostly recovered now, and I slept enough and crawled my way back to the desk. So let's dive right into AI, and we're going to start with just a few things that we found interesting that might be interesting to the audience. And again, let us know, give us some feedback. There's you can go to our website modernlogic.io and provide us with some feedback about what you want to see, what you want to hear, what you liked, what you didn't like. As you can see, we're new at this, and we're really looking forward to tuning this to make something that's really valuable to you.
Yeah. Speaking of new at this, I think you should tip your camera down a little bit. You're just like a disembodied head.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Is that better?
That's better. Not that I would mind a disembodied head, Dustin.
That's always been my life dream, just to
Yeah.
be the floating head in the
Head in the
computer
jar.
screen
Yeah.
from like the 1980s sci-fi, like the cheesy sci-fi.
They made
That's
fun of it, and it wasn't the Simpsons show. What was the sci-fi spin-off of that?
AI gets us one step closer to my dream of being a disembodied head inside of a computer. Most people don't want to do that, but to each their own. It would make certain aspects of my life a lot easier. I wouldn't have to mow the lawn, for example. All right, so let's get started. So you had seen something that I thought was really interesting.
Big fan of this other podcast called Cautionary Tales, and it's just fun. It's not about AI at all, but the recent episode talked about what is supposedly the world's worst poet that ever existed. And I won't spoil it for you. It turns out it's way more interesting than he was just a kind of blithely unaware of how bad his poetry was. But this guy named McGonagall, he was a weaver, and during Industrial Revolution times, lost his job to changes in technology, and he adapted in a really interesting way to continue his career. And on the face of it, it looked like he just was blithely unaware of how bad a poet he was. I can read just a few lines of some of his poetry. A poem about a tragedy in which many people died due to a rail bridge collapse. And his poem goes, "Beautiful railway bridge of the silvery Tay, alas, I'm so very sorry to say that 90 lives have been taken away on the last Sabbath day of 1879, which will be remembered for a very long time."
It's gorgeously
Yeah.
bad. As someone who has a background in poetry, I don't know, not a lot of people know this, but I wanted to be a poet. I went to school for writing, and this tweaks me in delightful ways.
Yeah.
I've certainly written poetry. It wasn't quite this bad because this is a work of art, but this is an exceptional thing.
In fact, it's hard to imagine you could make a more trite and hard to listen to poem. And I think that's maybe the point of what McGonagall was doing, in fact.
So how does that
But
relate to
anyway,
AI?
it's the changing environment in which he was working. He could no longer make his living as a weaver, and so he had to come up with something new to do. And maybe a little spoiler. Pause here, go listen to the podcast if you care. But in fact, what he was doing was not becoming a poet. He was really becoming an entertainer. And the purpose of his terrible poetry was to entertain by how bad it was. And I thought that was really interesting. You have to be inventive and creative when you're facing changing times. So today we're seeing AI coming, and a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen to the shape of work in the future. What are we going to be doing? And that's where you have to be really creative and think, okay, what is this thing capable of? And how do we use it? And what will be my role and how it gets used in the future? You can't just put on blinders and continue to do what you've always been doing when the world around you is changing.
Oh, and I think this gets to something that I've been thinking about for a long time with AI, what I like about AI. And I'm certainly don't want to be dismissive of the change that's going to come and people that may or may not lose their jobs. But I think in the near term, first of all, it's not replacing humans yet in the vast majority of scenarios. We've got lots of studies and evidence that which gets to my news tip, which we'll get to in a second. But one of the things I think about is how much of our day job do we actually like doing? How many of our employees are doing work that's generating value for our businesses versus work that we hired them to do? A lot of these are extremely bright, extremely talented, extremely passionate people, especially our really good employees. And for me, it's not about replacing employees. It's about making it so that when they show up at work on a Monday or they're going to bed Sunday night, they're not like, oh, tomorrow I'm going to have to do all this drudgery. I'm going to have to get through. I'm going to read this form. I got to fill out this legal, and I got to send this email. And like, even for business owners, maybe especially for business owners, there's a lot of paper that needs to be pushed and spreadsheets that need to be reviewed and things that AI is really good at. And it can feel like 95% of our time is working on stuff that isn't generative for the business. And I think when you go and you look at the research, that's actually true. And so
Oh yeah.
I see AI as this extremely freeing thing. It certainly has been freeing for me in my day to day. And I'm hopeful that it can be freeing to our employees as well, so they like showing up to work, so that we can create something better together, so that we can spend less time doing things that computers are good at and more time doing things that humans are good at.
Yes. But also on the flip side of that, use it in a smart way. Because I get emails now that read as though AI wrote them. And there's even been jokes going around. I'm going to need an AI to extract out what this person is trying to actually say, because there's so much fluff that's been inserted by.
And the M dash, poor M dash is a casualty.
Okay, let's stop right there. The M dash, I actually like the M dash.
Me
I was
too.
So excited
it's a
when
great
I figured out
piece
that
of...
I could type hyphen, and on Mac OS, the operating system automatically replaces that with an M dash, which is the proper punctuation mark when you want to do a parenthetical aside in a sentence. You can do commas to do parentheticals, but an M dash is another way. It's different than a semicolon. It's different than a colon. It has its purpose. But what's happened is AI's picked on M dashes way faster than everyone else in English class did. And not everyone was like a punctuation nerd. It's when people see M dashes now, they think, oh, this was written by AI. And so now it's almost being poisoned.
Yeah, the tip is, if you want your work to not sound like an AI, the first thing you do is search for M dashes and remove them and replace them with commas or buts or what have you. And as much as I love the M dash, I agree. There's plenty of writing I've gotten that's been written by an AI that has an M dash. And it's actually pretty hard to teach the AI to say, don't use M dashes. Sometimes you have to say it multiple times and one still sneaks in. And so that is considered the number one way to find AI writing. And unfortunately for those of us who love the M dash, for now anyway, it's probably better that your corporate communications don't have them, because there's a whole class of people who don't understand the M dash, who look at that and say that was written by a human. And I think to the broader point, when you're using AI to write, which I think it should be used to write, you want to make sure that you're doing all of the proper things to train it in your voice, to review it so it sounds like you and it sounds human. The goal of using the AI is to help you think through what you want to say, to maybe get rid of some of the filler words that, or critiques that you would normally have to do by going over the email over and over, get closer to that final draft. That sometimes I've really sweated a detail, like we're communicating with a client and I have to give them bad news, and I've sweated it for 20 minutes, and AI gets me 15 minutes closer to the end zone, because it gets me closer. The goal of it is to get me closer to where I would be without it.
You know what? I have a counterpoint to this, because it's the shiny new tool, and I feel like we want to grab it for everything. And literally, we were just having a conversation, you and I, this morning, about how I had crafted this email to send to a client, and it was very professional tone. I was trying to make sure that it had an encouraging sign off. But then at the end, you're like, why don't you just call this guy? You have a substantial topic you want to bring up with them. You have no idea how they're going to feel receiving this in this long email. And a long email is daunting. They might see it on their phone when they're on the go. And so you're totally right. I could have maybe used AI to help structure our thoughts. Okay, these are the points we want to make. But don't forget that actually the key to succeeding in business is, more often than not, a good human connection. And in this case, AI wasn't being helpful to me.
Yeah, and this is something that a friend who owns a different business brought up to me, which is if you're talking if you're going back and forth a few times, or you have important information to convey, oftentimes it's better to just pick up the phone. And because we're engineers and because we love AI, it's easy to reach for the tool you have today because it de-stresses that communication for you, but it might increase the stress of the communication for the client. And so that gets me moving on to my news article, which is an MIT study came out. A lot of people may have seen it. It was in Forbes and Fortune. It's from Project Nando, which is one of MIT's deep research agentic AI groups. They did a study, the state of AI in business in 2025, and you probably saw the headline, 95% of AI projects fail. And this, of course, being a company that does AI, we dove right into that, and I wanted to look at,
okay, what's going on? We don't want to do that.
How does this square with what I'm seeing, which is massive improvements in efficiency? And there's a lot of evidence on the other side that we've seen 40% from the same group, 40% improvement in productivity on consulting teams because of AI. And so how do you square that circle? And I think reading deeper into it, the reason these enterprise AI projects fail is because they are trying to replace employees directly, or they're trying to create completely autonomous business processes for things like customer service that the AI just isn't there yet, or might never be there, right? It certainly isn't there yet. And the real value in AI, they found the 5% that succeed are automation projects, things that you're already doing or that you can't do because there's time barriers, that you then take the AI and you enable. So back office automation, data transformation, spreadsheets, finance, analysis, analytics. And you're not replacing humans, you're replacing the tasks that humans inherently don't like to do and may not be good at. And those are the 5. The other thing they found that I thought was really interesting, and maybe it's a little self-serving, is the ones that really, another high indicator of failure was trying to do it all themselves and build completely internal expertise.
I was going to say that because I've seen big companies, I have friends at big companies, and there's a certain hubris when you have a big budget that we're not going to just go take this off the shelf solution. We're going to do it all ourselves. And that's really hard. Like, training your own model is really hard. And I can just imagine a lot of big companies are like, we're not going to use an off the shelf model. We can do better. We have our own data. We'll do that. But that can be really hard to get right. But whereas if you just take off the shelf solutions or adapt them slightly, you're going to be way more successful. And that's the kind of things that we do and that we see small businesses doing that are so useful.
And the way I think of this is, and this is similar in our managed software business where we help people manage their websites and mobile apps. And what is, your team can probably do an adequate or even a good job at this, but this is one of the only things we do. And we do it across 100 different organizations. And so we have a skill set that is, we're unflappable. We've seen everything. Our day job is to wake up and think about things like AI. And your day job is probably not that. And so I think in enterprise, and particularly in the enterprises we've worked at, you're probably tasking a non-AI specialist team to help you build your AI. And they're training up alongside you. And we're all learning about AI together.
Yeah.
But they're going to train up on the specific big co flavor of AI, and they're not going to see outside of the big co box, and they're not going to see, your competitor and how they're using AI, or the small business, and they're not going to see the insights they might be learning there and bring that into your business. And so you naturally get more expertise when you go to the experts who are spending their whole soul digging into this stuff, and they wake up excited about it, as excited as you are. You've also got other things going on in your day, so that makes perfect sense. And we saw this when we were both at Adobe as well, is the not invented here thing, the hubris of big companies and the fear of big companies, which is that by going outside you're going to get scooped, or it's not going to be at the quality that you want. But the other thing I think that you get when you go with a vendor, and some of these are packaged products they're recommending, is you get 80% of the way there way faster than if you're making it from scratch. Like, it's a pancake mix versus making the pancakes from scratch. recipe.
Nobody's out there building their own operating system or their own word processor. Like at some point, these tools are mature enough. You just get one.
Just
I
use
feel
them.
like this is trending. A great segue to today's main topic.
I did have
Which is
one other piece that I wanted to bring up before we dive
okay.
into the main topic, which is the other thing that Project Nanda found with this AI in business is that it is not replacing employees. It's backfilling positions that businesses are having trouble finding and recruiting for. And so this idea that we
Well,
have
that's
this
cool.
big wave of job loss, it's not here yet. It might come, but it's not here yet. It's not replacing employees. Its best use in businesses, as I said earlier, is augmenting employees so they're doing better work, or they're doing less of the work they don't want to be doing and more generative work for your business. And they're seeing that across the enterprise as well. So it's not just small companies, it's really big companies are seeing those kinds of outcomes. And I like to hear that because I don't want to be at the front of a sea change that ends up with a lot of people out of work. I don't
Yeah.
think we need, not to get too far into the philosophy, I don't think we need to go there as a society or as technologists. I think there's so much value to unlock that we should all be doing better. So I'm an optimist inherently, right? That's business
I think
owners.
it-
We're all
even just
optimists, right?
even just from a practical standpoint, it's very hard to change the whole world overnight. So even though there's amazing things being shown by Sam Altman or whoever, there's still going to be a gradual process to incorporate these things. And as certain kinds of work get automated, new kinds of work are going to be created. New demand will be created. Yeah.
Okay, now sorry to interrupt. Now you can
Okay.
dive into the
Yeah.
topic.
Sorry, I cut you off. Let me finish. Yeah. I'm just thinking about how small businesses have been successful. Brings up today's topic we want to talk about, which is let's talk about what is really pragmatic. What is practical AI? And to kick it off, I'll start with a counterexample because there's so much like stuff that is not AI that is being purported as AI. And I go to Vikings games, and I was at a preseason game, and in the stadium on the big screen they had this supposedly AI generated video of a Viking character, and you could vote using your phone to have it generate a video for you. And then at halftime or whatever, they played the video that supposedly the audience had voted for of a Viking playing football in a shopping mall or something. It was pretty
Right.
silly. And it was sponsored by this company called Lumen AI. And there were so many things that were not AI about this. It made me crazy. For one thing, I'm almost certain it was an actual voice actor doing the acting of the character. It was just too polished. It was too spot on. And also, if you're going to spend the kind of money to buy space on the jumbotron at a football game, you're not going to just let one of these AI generators generate fake content for you. There, tools like that may be useful for, say, accessibility. So a book could be read by someone who doesn't have vision. That's a great use for AI. But building a highly polished commercial, it just doesn't make sense.
Not in real
Even the
time that you're gonna
yeah,
spray
no,
across a. We're not there yet. I
even
would just imagine the
the
danger to the brand if it does something.
so it was clearly a canned thing that they prepared in advance. It wasn't some kind of real time AI thing. And then even the visuals were really good. And they may have been tuned with AI, but I'm betting it was a conventionally produced commercial spot using actors or motion capture or 3D rendering or any of those techniques. So it wasn't really AI that we were watching, even though they purported. And then the company that was sponsoring it is not actually an AI company. You look at what Lumen does, they are an infrastructure company. They provide fiber optic network to your data center. They provide telecommunications across the country. They maybe can stock computers for you and help you with storage and other things. It sounds like another Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud kind of thing. Okay, you can run AI on that platform, but it is not itself AI. And so there's so many things out there that are just slapping AI. Like I'm surprised there's not Coca-Cola AI or Sugar Cocoa Puffs AI. Like it's just we'll add AI to everything. It makes it better right now. It's
The AI flavored Coke. I
yeah.
would look at sideways in the store, right?
No, I
Although
mean I
anyone
don't
who
know.
doesn't look at Coke flavors at this point, new Coke flavors sideways. Personal
Coke
opinion. So someone's
Coke
gonna write
Zero
me about
AI.
Coke Orange and be like, "I love Coke Orange." I'm like, "Yeah, but like, Coke Orange has." There's a history of other Cokes that lead up to that that we can't ignore when we drink Coke
New
Orange.
Cherry Coke Zero with vanilla AI.
Yeah, with vanilla AI. You heard it here, folks. You'll see.
Yeah.
You're gonna see this in this stuff.
Okay, so that's what pragmatic AI is not.
What is
What
it?
is it?
So, like, one of the things that I think about when I think about AI is what can I do with it right now? Not what is it going to be good at in 2 years? And the way that I approach AI is I think every day I look at what I have to do and I think, where can AI help me today? And it actually required a mindset shift for me, even as a technologist who's spent his career on the cutting edge of, I was at the cutting edge of the internet revolution and the mobile revolution and the social revolution. And it still took some work to get into the mindset of, what can AI help me with? So I have two moments that I've created in my day. In the beginning of the day, I think, look at my tasks, where can AI help? And at the end of the day, I look back and I think, just 5 minutes, what could AI have helped me with? And one of the things that I use it for, I do a lot of presentations. We do workshops, both paid and unpaid. I do a lot of public speaking. And so I'm always looking for ways to make the prep time for public speaking go down, because for every hour that I spend, or even every half hour I spend in front of an audience, I'm spending something like 8, 16, 24 hours prepping
Yeah,
a new
easily.
presentation, right?
People don't appreciate how much time it takes, but I usually give myself 8 hours per hour.
And the thing that I really hate is slide decks. And there was a guy named Tufty who did a lot of information design. If anyone is an information design nut, I highly recommend looking up Tufty. It's Tufte.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love
And
his books. They're
and
beautiful.
the books themselves are gorgeous. They're well worth
Yeah.
it if you're into the visual design of information. And so I'm looking at these slideshows going, no matter how much time I spend making them look good, they're gonna they're not slideshows are not an effective way to communicate high-end concepts. And so you end up with clip art and you end up with bullet points. And how many configurations of clip art and bullet points do I need
I
to
know.
create? And it's
Yeah.
really frustrating because I also don't want to retread my old presentations and regurgitate the same clip art over and over again. That's just not who I am. I want it to be unique and tailored to the presentation that I'm doing. And so the place that I've really found AI to be useful, especially as we've grown in the business, is we have a brand standard as well for how these slideshows need to work and need to look. And we have a designer who designed a really great set of presentation templates for us. And half the time when I reach for a new talk, I start from scratch and I don't reach for that template. And my designer gets very mad at me. He's
Yeah.
editing this video. And so these last few
Sorry.
presentations, so very sorry, because they look gorgeous and I'm not gonna do anywhere near as good of a job. But it's just not, it wasn't my natural instinct. So I thought in the last few presentations I did, why not see how far AI can get? And AI is not amazing at building slideshows yet. I know there are AI products out there that can build slideshows, but what I want is I want a slideshow that works inside of Google, which is our Office platform. I want it to be native to slides, and Gemini, which is Google's AI, just doesn't do a good job building the actual slideshow. But I have this PDF of our slideshow. So what I did is I went in, and here's a concrete example of a great way to use AI is I went and I got the PDF that was an export of our slideshow template, and I uploaded that as context into ChatGPT GPT that creates slideshows, and I said, hey, I know you can't generate the slideshow itself, but given this deck, and given here's what I want to talk about, can you pair up and suggest content for this workshop that fits, and then suggest which slide template I should be using? So it will happily go and say, this particular overview content should use slide 7, which is your overview slide, and this one should use slide 10 because you can adapt your product slide to
Right.
this tiered slide. It doesn't get things perfectly. No, it doesn't read everything. It sometimes doesn't understand visual data in the way humans understand visual data, but it gets you a step by step. Here's 15 slides. Here's the template slides you should use. Here's the 2 to 3 bits of content that should be every slide, and then you go and you make it your own. And it just helps me. It saves me from the really time intensive couple hours of ideation and creation right at the beginning, where I'm staring at a blank page, going, I don't like what I'm doing, and then I delete it and I start over, and I go.
So what I'm hearing you say is, in order to be successful using AI in this case, you did a few key things, which I think we're going to see a pattern here. You helped the AI succeed by giving it appropriate context, which means you showed it another slideshow that you had previously made that you liked. You pasted in all your notes that you were going to use to speak by. And then it was not creating out of thin air something for you. It was basically reformulating the content you'd given it into the format you wanted it. So now it's ready to go. And then the final piece was you were involved, so you had the human review. Because you said mostly it was great, but a couple times it missed something or dropped something.
For instance, we had 3 tiers, a slide that was showing 3 tiers, and I wanted to adapt it to show 3 bits of a different type of information, right? Because this isn't a sales deck, which was the original design for the deck we use. Yeah. This is just an informational presentation, and it didn't understand that there were 3 boxes. It just gave me content for 2 boxes. So if I just gone in and there'd be a blank empty box, and I'm sitting here looking at the empty box going, ChatGPT doesn't understand that there were 3 boxes on this slide. Right. It just understands that this slide was the tier presentation slide, and that it probably has a couple of places to put different types of information.
Or it could be a similar thing that people have joked that you can ask an AI how many R's are in the word strawberry, and it'll say 2. It doesn't actually, it's not actually thinking like a human.
I will say, it's technically correct. There are 2. There's also more than 2.
There's also a third one. That's true. Yeah.
And that's how AI thinks, right? It's not a human. It doesn't think like a human. It not just knows it's seen the word strawberry associated with the number 2 somewhere deep in its training. Right. And so it's got those 2 neurons that are tied together, just like when you walk outside in the fall and you smell and you remember your childhood running through the grass or running through the leaves. AI makes similarly strange connections because it's a neural network.
Yeah. It's more like an autocomplete that's just very powerful, but also has a little bit of element of free association to it.
But so do humans. I like to tell people, and I think this is very true, it makes mistakes, maybe not like a human does, but probably at a rate that a 4-year degree brand new entrant to the workforce does. But it has the education of a PhD now, ChatGPT 5 does, and I think that is actually largely true. But it still thinks like an entry level. It makes entry level mistakes because it's not fully polished on how to go about things. Because it's not actually the reasoning models are reasoning, but they're not reasoning the way you and I would be reasoning. So I think touching back to the best way to use AI pragmatically, look at your tasks today and say, what parts do I hate? What can and just start chatting with it. What can you help me with? How would I need to formulate this to make so you help me with this? And spend a half hour a week or an hour a week trying to dive deeper and try to take those meaty tasks that you have that are going to take a lot of time and what the output value is and what good looks like, and try to connect the two using AI, give it context, tell it exactly what you want, how you want it to think. What I also like to give it, here's my tone, here's some examples of my writing, here's what I like in a deck versus an email, and here's how to make it my own. And it's going to get closer and closer the more I go back and tweak and tune it. And you can teach it over time, and you learn these techniques over time by applying them to your daily workflows. And so writing is a great way and a great space for you to experiment with AI, because you can very easily see, I gave it this input, I got this output, and I know this output is not what I wanted it to be. And now you can iterate on that work. And I think that's the other key point that I don't see a lot of people talk about with AI is, just like computer programming, it's what we call an iteration loop, right? You start with something and it's probably not going to give you the best output. And your goal is to tweak it over time so it's giving you better and better output. And then there are ways like GPTs or GEMs where you can save off that prompting so that learning is now encoded in a way that you can build on in the future. And you can give it more additional context to get it better and better. And so now you're training effectively the AI intern to get closer and closer to that result, which is saving you more and more time. These things compound over time. It might only save you 5 minutes the first time, but that's 5 minutes that you don't have to spend, and the next 5 minutes could be spent saving you 7 minutes. And it adds up to hours.
Oh, it certainly does. Yeah. I've actually been spending some time building a tool to help build these sorts of things. And it's amazing that the context is really king. Maybe I'm beating the drum too much with this, but that's basically how the GPTs work. So you may have noticed if you just go to ChatGPT and you start talking, it the further you get into the conversation, the more it tends to zero in on what you're talking about. And when Dustin mentions GPTs or this tool that I'm building, the key is that we're preloading a fresh conversation with domain knowledge, basically the stuff you end up having to tell it each time you work with it. Since I'm a coder, I've mentioned this before, I work a lot with this tool called Cursor, and it has a way to preload context by writing little text files, just little kind of messages you create that tell it, hey, every time I'm doing this, I want you to do it this way. And you can absolutely apply those same techniques to sales emails. If you want to have a certain tone or there's a certain tactic you tend to use, you can just put that in the instructions at the start when you're building a GPT or another kind of AI-based tool. And now whenever you go there, it's going to know to do that. In fact, you can even take it further and connect these systems via what they call tools, so that you can actually like load from your content, customer management system, your CRM, who are your contacts. And you can even tell it to go through all of the leads I've got and research them. So then when it's constructing touch-base emails, it'll know the context of what you talked about last week, what that customer's interested in, what domain their business is in. It can pull all that into context. So now the messaging that it creates is going to be more on target, and that won't be something that you have to, as a human, like reread the notes. And, oh yeah, it'll help you get there faster.
Or rewrite it and throw it away. The first time we used
Yeah.
it to generate marketing content, because of that writing background, I'm really picky about what I put in front of humans, and I just deleted it all and wrote it all from scratch. But that wasn't the appropriate reaction. When your first reaction is, "Hey, this tool is producing bad content," the right reaction with AI is, "Okay, let's go back to that original thing. What was wrong with it? Let's tell what I love about LLMs that you couldn't do with old computers. Old computers, you have to be like, print this exact sentence and replace this name, right? With LLMs, you can be more concise. This is too wordy. Don't flatter the customer. Don't
Yes.
talk about. I just did one this week where we were showing a customer how to build a client communication outreach GPT, and it just wanted to. So I said, go research this website, and it would go and hit the website and get information. And the first thing it would say is, at Big Co, you do this, and it's so great that you do this. And I'm thinking, as a sales guy and as a person who buys things, that I know who I am. The Big Co
Yeah.
knows who they are. They know why they're great. They don't need
Yeah.
to spend 3, 4, 5 sentences reading about themselves. What they want to know is how their greatness and your greatness attach together. And you have 2 sentences to get that across in a sales email, because by the time you get to the 3rd sentence, they've deleted your email. And so
Yep.
be concise. Don't use M dash is another one that I'll put in a few times. Just don't. I love them. Don't do it.
Also, don't use emojis.
I would.
please.
We should do an experiment where we use extra M dashes and see what it does.
And
See
extra random bold words.
and make random bold words. Don't flatter people. Just be concise and to the point. Sign off. Make it. You can be really specific with the sales outreach. Make it less than 60 characters, or make it less than 60 words. And then you go back and you tweak it and you get better and better. And the other thing you can do is then take that context and share it with the rest of your team. And you can say,
Yeah.
okay, now that this is in our brand voice, now I can give my designer access to that brand voice, and he can get something that still needs me to review it, but he can get 80% of the way there himself without having to wait for me, the business owner, to get to that task, which might take 2 or 3 weeks, even though it'll take 30 seconds, because I'm off doing a presentation and I'm off prepping for a workshop, and it's
Right.
not the highest priority thing.
This is just tying back to our earlier thing about the shape of future work. We're talking about it right now. Instead of editing copy directly, what we end up doing is creating better instructions for the AI so that the next time it runs, it does a better job. And so we're short-circuiting that.
It's
Wasted
almost
effort.
like training a new employee,
Yeah.
in that there are 2 ways to have a new employee. There's, here's exactly what you need to do step by step, and oh, you missed step 7, or here's why you're doing these things and how we
Yeah.
got to this point, and I trust you but we're going to review your output, and we're going to go back and we're going to talk about what we can learn from from what you did. And that way you get all the creative energy that your employee is doing, as well
Yeah.
as your standard operating procedure. So it's the best of both worlds, because sometimes your new employee is going to come up with something really amazing. Not often, but occasionally they're going to come up with an improvement to your SOP. And similar with ChatGPT, it's not as cool as a new employee, but it will similarly sometimes really nail something that you might not have thought of, and it'll make a suggestion that you might not have found. So it's worth the time to go back and teach it how to do a good job.
Exactly.
And
if you don't
just
give
assume,
the feedback,
yeah,
it's not going to ever up its game. It'll
And
continue to make that same mistake, and you'll continue to be frustrated with it, and you'll continue to think, why are we bothering?
yeah, and that should bring us to the word of the day. I think we're getting on in time.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. So what is a GPT anyway? It's such a strange, hard to say phrase. Why did they call their product that? Chat GPT. It's an acronym based on the technology that underlies how these things work. And it stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So let's go through those one at a time.
They should have just called it that. Everyone would have loved it.
Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer.
Trademarkable.
Actually, we refer to it as Chad internally anyway, because even Chat GPT was too hard to say. Okay, but what does that mean? Generative, that means it creates content. So usually words, or the similar technology can be used to create images. Pre-trained just talks about how they built this neural network. It took a lot of data to get there. Basically, all the words on the internet umpteen times over.
And the thing is, I think with pre-trained, that means that they've done all that work in advance of you using the model. And you see all this talk about how hard it is to train these models. But when you're using it, it's not having to go and rebuild or rethink. It already has all of that knowledge in a kernel that it's already gotten to a point where it knows it. And the key there is it's way less computationally expensive. The drawback is the data usually lags back, which is why when you ask ChatGPT, how current is your data, it can say something like June 2025, and you're a few months or even up to a year behind, because the data is pre-trained. Right.
But the other thing about pre-trained is it does have some intrinsic knowledge, and that's really cool. That's how it's able to make inferences and deductive leaps. But in a rapidly evolving domain, as like software is, it's frustrating that it'll reach for solutions of problems that are like already out of date. So the pre-trained is great. That's how it understands language and it understands concepts and how they relate to one another. But the risk is it can sometimes be a little bit out of date. But that's why earlier I was harping on context. That's how you counteract the kind of built-in things that are out of date, by giving it modern, up-to-date facts when you talk to it. And then that'll help it use the right thing. And then the last word is transformer. And it's really technical. It turns out they've tried a lot of strategies for how to build these systems. And Transformer was an innovation, 4 or 5 years ago, about a different way to structure how the data gets fed into the system when they train it, and how to read the data out. And so that Transformer architecture was a really interesting new idea, and it was pivotal in allowing these large language models to come into existence.
Yeah, so the Transformer architecture was really the epiphany that allowed these large language models, GPT and Gemini, to really make that step from what we call an old traditional machine learning neural network, where it's weighting things and but it doesn't truly have that conceptual connection that you saw as a sea change with ChatGPT. When we all opened ChatGPT and we asked it a dumb question about what are the rooms in a 1600s cathedral and what were they used for? And it just gave me an answer. And then it's like, do you want to draw a map of the cathedral? And I was mind blown. We all had that experience, and we couldn't do that with the old technology. We could only approximate it. Transformers really allowed us to unlock these LLMs, large language models, and get to that. Really is the basis of the technology. But when you get under the hood, like what really is a transformer, be prepared to read research papers, because that's when the really nerdy nitty-gritty of how these things work mathematically and how they boil language into a way a computer can understand. My favorite description of computers is they're rocks we've taught to think by striking them with lightning. And I think that's a great way to think of a computer. And so there's still a dumb rock at the end of the day. How did we get from dumb rock to what are the rooms in a 1600s cathedral? And the answer is lots and lots of math.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of dumb rock in them still, which is why we need to be around to help them succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just forget what GPT stands for and just call it Chad. It's what we do most of the time. That's just easier.
Do we have a tip of the week? I think my tip of the week is, if you're using Copilot, you should be looking at Copilot Studio. If you're using ChatGPT, you should be looking at GPTs. If you're using Gemini, you should be looking at Gems. So each one of these guys has a way to save off a prompt, provide it additional context, and use it over and over again. And that is really where the value for your business starts to get unlocked, is those daily GPTs, those mini agents, if you will, that you're training to get better and better. And then you can share those with your team, and you can educate your team on how to use them. So now you don't have to be involved in the day-to-day generation of everything. You can go from more of a creator of all of that content to a reviewer and a curator of that content.
Yep, that's a great tip.
And I think that with that, we'll wrap the episode. I think we might be a little longer than our normal.
I know, the time flew. That was really fun. I hope everyone listening enjoyed our conversation today. And stay tuned. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode.
And you can sign up again. Go to modernlogic.io/podcast. You can sign up on any podcast platform. You can follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow us on your favorite social network of choice. And please do reach out. Let us know if this was helpful, if you learned anything. If you didn't learn anything and you just hate our faces, any feedback would be really helpful.
Send in your questions. And we'd love to talk about the topics that really interest you. You know, what worked? Tell us what's working for you in AI. Or what has frustrated you when you've tried to use it. We'd love to talk about those things, maybe even find solutions for you.
Yep. And we'll be back in another few weeks with another one. So until then, see you later.
Bye-bye.